in a world full of negative people. Hey man, I'm just trying to be a positive guy, a positive farmer, a positive outfitter. This is a Shark Farmer podcast with your host, Rob Sharkey. Whatever.
And welcome again to Shark Farmer Podcast. Hey, I'm your host, Rob Sharkey, and today we're going to get this, Bucyrus, Ohio. Did I say that right, Ethan?
You did. Good job.
Bucyrus. That sounds like a villain from a movie or something.
I believe they say that it was named after like King Cyrus or whatever, of Persia, or I don't really know, honestly.
Was he a villain?
I'm sure the people he conquered would say that.
Yeah. You should really know your town's history.
Yeah, I'll work on that for you.
Yeah. It's a really cool name. I can just imagine it in some movie or something. Damn you, Bucyrus, and your evil minions.
Oh, geez.
I mean, is that
we'll
the parade? Do you have a parade every year with villains?
Yes, we are the bratwurst capital of America.
Oh, you are not. Seriously?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We have the Bratwurst Festival every August.
Yeah.
Every August. That's our claim to fame. So,
how does one become the bratwurst capital of the world?
No, not of the world, just America.
Oh, those Germans. Yeah, you better not tick them off. They hold grudges, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of German heritage here, I believe. Well, I'm German, so yeah, Bratwurst capital of America. Used to have a lot more bratwurst makers in town, but now we pretty much only have one. Yeah, it's a big deal around here. We have the Bratwurst Festival Queen. They have 3 days of just stuff going on downtown. Shuts down the whole town.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to move on, but I just can't. Ethan, the Bratwurst Queen. Now, what kind of crown does she wear?
Just a normal, festival crown, I believe.
Does she have a scepter?
A what?
A scepter.
Oh, one of those things they hold?
Yeah. I figured she'd have like a brat on the end of it. Or maybe her scepter dispenses mustard.
No, there is no scepter. But fun fact, this year we were asked to donate some watermelons for the watermelon eating contest. It turns out they do a seed spitting contest too, but they didn't tell us that, so we gave them seedless watermelons. So that was awkward when they announced that the seed spitting contest was canceled.
Oh my gosh. How many dreams did you crush that day?
I am not sure, but they never specified, and we were kind of scratching our heads afterwards thinking, well, isn't there a watermelon seed spitting contest? And my dad's like, yeah, I believe there is. So, oh well, maybe next year.
This is a fascinating town, Ethan, Bucyrus, Ohio. I mean, you've got the Bratwurst Queen and spitting contest. There's just material for days there.
Yeah, a lot of fodder there.
Let's go into the ad before I say something I regret. Okay, Ethan, have you ever heard of an independent film that's just come out called Silo?
I have.
Okay. All right, I'll just ask you, what have you heard about it?
It's a film about grain entrapment. That's about it. I haven't had the chance to watch it or anything.
Yeah, it is. It's called Silo, but it takes place in a bin. But we're just going to let that go. Because honestly, who would go watch a movie called Grain Bin? It sounds like something like a giant bear with Gentle Ben or whatever that was. They probably thought it was a sequel. So I go along with calling it Silo.
Yep. It flows better than Grain Bin.
Yeah, you got to appeal to the masses. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Okay, so this guy out of New York, right? Not a farmer, has no ties to ag. He hears about grain entrapments where people, unfortunately, get caught in the bins. A lot of times it results in a fatality. And he's going, well, why doesn't anybody ever talk about this? Because they're telling him that it happens, multiple times a year. So he decides he's going to go ahead and make a movie out of it, but he doesn't want to just make some boring movie or whatever. So he goes out and they write a story about it, a pretty realistic way of how it happens, and then actually kind of a learning thing, but yet entertaining. That's the hard thing to do. You know what I'm saying, Ethan? You can entertain and you can educate, but you try to do both at once, it doesn't always work, does it?
Yeah, that's true. It takes a talented person to do that.
Yeah, and he is. And here's the thing. So I think, my opinion, us in agriculture really need to support someone outside of ag that's trying to help us. So you can't just go to a movie theater like the old AMCs and that to see this thing. because, Hollywood controls all that. I don't know all the things, but I think there's evil people named Bucyrus that control all this stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
So what you do is you go to silothefilm.com and you can set up a screening. So, yeah, you can't just buy like a DVD of it yet.
Not on Netflix?
No, I don't think so. Or that new Disney thing. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
That's what he needs it on.
Might not be very kid-friendly.
Actually, I would... Mrs. Shark Farmer over there on the other side of the glass, what age would you say this is appropriate to?
Oh, gosh, probably 11 and up.
You think so?
I mean, it just depends on your kid.
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
it teaches something, so...
Yeah. I wouldn't take the 5-year-old to it.
Probably not.
No. Okay, so Ethan, there in Bucyrus, do they have meetings for agriculture, like farm bureaus, your banks, your whatever? Do they have those meetings, those boring meetings they have every single year?
They do.
Yeah,
That is
imagine.
true.
Imagine replacing one of those meetings with a screening of this where people can see that it's only about 75 minutes, and then they talk about it afterwards with some materials that they give you to talk about. Imagine if you guys did that. You could actually educate and maybe save a life.
It's a solid idea, Rob.
It is. And you know what? Everybody's saying, well, screening, my gosh, that's got to be ridiculous. No, it's about the price of what these meetings are paying for speakers anyway. So go to silothefilm.com, get a screening in your community, contact your farm bureaus, your ag banks, who's ever putting on all these meetings, contact them and say, hey, let's do this year. Silo the Film. I'd love to see that in Bucyrus, Ohio.
Yeah, we can work on that.
With your seedless watermelon and your Brock Queen. Moving on. Okay, so Ethan Stuckey.
Not so ooh.
Well,
Cookie.
you told me it's like cookie, and then I wrote it ST and then cookie. No, okay, so I messed that up. All right.
Yeah, I don't know. It can be tough.
So that's German?
My mom's side of the family, I'll spell it for you and you try to say it. Tfeifer.
Tfeifer?
F-E-R. Try to say that.
I would, but I know you're German, and I would assume you'd get angry when I mispronounce it. Pfeiffer?
Pfeiffer.
Pfeiffer.
The F is silent.
Of course it is, because why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, let's just throw random consonants in there and not say them.
Okay, you're only 21 years old.
Correct.
My gosh, did you have your first beer?
I did. It was terrible.
Was it? Okay. Well, it's probably one of those
I had
domestics.
some hard cider. That wasn't too bad.
Good night. All right. Was it seedless hard cider?
It was.
Okay. 21 years old. Give us a little background of growing up in Bucyrus.
So I grew up on a dairy farm. I have two older brothers, Ben and Zach. Ben is 6 years older than me. Zach is 5 years older than me. So we grew up on a dairy farm. It was about 200, 300 cows as a kid and had row crop land to go with it. Grew up on the farm. We always got to milk on Saturday afternoons, I believe. My cousins would milk Sunday afternoons and vice versa. So we always had jobs helping out on the dairy growing up with the crops and everything, with the cows. At one point, we were taking all the bull calves and raising them ourselves, kind of gave us something to do. We always had, like, chickens at home and just did a lot of just random odd jobs.
So this was more than, it sounded like your cousin, so there was, like, an uncle involved?
Yes. So my uncle managed the cow part, and my dad managed the row crop end of things, and my grandpa did kind of a little bit of both. So I suppose to back up how my dad got here, my dad was originally from Indiana. He grew up on a 20-acre apple orchard that my grandpa on the other side of the family planted in the late 60s. And he also planted strawberries. At one time, he had 30 acres of strawberries and 40 acres of vegetables in the 80s, and then more vegetables into the 90s. So that was a very big operation just north of Indianapolis that my dad grew up on.
To interject there, people that aren't involved in agriculture, I mean, those aren't real big acres, but the crops growing up, 20 acres of apples is a ton of apples.
It is a lot of apples.
Yeah.
Yep. 30 acres of strawberries is a ton of strawberries. Yeah, there's only one farm in Ohio that I know of that has that many acres. I'm sure there's more than one farm, but there's only one farm I know of that has that many acres of strawberries in Ohio today. And that was all pick your own. So in the 70s and 80s, not to be sexist or anything, but a lot of women in the home just didn't work. So they would go out and pick their own strawberries and can them and freeze them, and that's just what they did. But as they got more jobs in the 80s and then into the 90s, that demand wasn't there, so he ended up getting out of strawberries altogether. But for a while there, that was a very big part of his business. So.
That's pretty interesting. I hadn't really thought about it that way. We talked about before on other shows the art of canning, how most people don't even really know how to do it anymore. But
right.
I suppose when you move a lot of your customers into a workforce, they're probably just going to start buying their strawberries at the grocery store.
Exactly. And what's funny is a lot of that pick-your-own type deal has come full circle. I can get to that later, but today we do a lot of pick-your-own, and a lot of orchards do primarily pick-your-own. It's just kind of funny to see it come full circle, because these people that are now maybe parents and grandparents now take their kids out to do it. More of like an experience. They're not in it to save money or anything. It's just for the experience.
That is funny, because I'm sure when they were going, the kids that they were taking back in the 70s or 80s were like, oh, I hate doing this. And now taking them as something very cool and an experience.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just funny to watch everything come full circle like that. My grandpa Stuckey, so he had that orchard. Him and Grandma ran a farm market too, and they pressed, I think up to their peak, they were pressing 100,000 gallons of cider a year, taking it to grocery stores all around Indianapolis and Indiana. They had an absolutely massive cider press.
100,000 gallons of apple cider in 1 year?
Annually. I believe that was the number. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that was the number.
100,000.
It's been a while. He had a flash pasteurizer. He had a bottler. The cider press he has, which is still there at the orchard, it could press people. That's how big it is. My dad almost lost a finger.
Okay. Yeah, you just told us a lot there, mop boy.
Yeah, would send cider all over Indianapolis there. And so my dad, he helped out with that. And my mom and dad got married, and they ended up moving to Indiana for a year. And they had my oldest brother, Ben, then that next summer. So they worked there for a year or two. Didn't really love it. They had different ideologies on how to run the market, just based on what times they grew up in. Dad kind of wanted to do it a different way, but Grandma and Grandpa kind of liked the way they were doing things. Dad decided to come out to Ohio and join the family dairy, because my grandpa grew row crops all during this time too, and he had vegetables, just kind of filling the balance of his acres.
Your dad's dad?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. So they had row crops anyways, so my dad always liked that more. So he came to Ohio and kind of bought into the family dairy and started doing row crop, while my uncle on my mom's side and my grandpa on my mom's side were already doing the dairy thing. So he joined that, and then I was born 2 years later. And so they were doing that for many years. We helped out with that a lot. When I was in junior high, we decided to expand the dairy, went from about 300 cows up to 500 cows, and built a couple new freestall barns. During that time when we were expanding, we had met with a consultant, and our dairy consultant kind of mentioned diversity in operations at one point. My one brother, Zach, my middle brother, he always likes to instigate things. He was a middle brother.
He's that guy.
He always liked to. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
All right, I'm picking up what you're laying down.
So he's like, hey, why don't you look into the diversity thing? Grandpa grew apples and vegetables and stuff. And I was like, you know what? That's pretty cool. Because we would always visit every summer over in Indiana, and we got to just help out in the store and such. And that was when I was real little, but they sold the orchard in the mid-2000s. Grandpa still had a 3 or 4 acre garden. He would raise vegetables and take them to farmers markets as his hobby, which is a rather large hobby to undertake. But we would always go and help him with that, whether we'd help him tend the giant garden and sell at farmers markets. And I just thought that was kind of fun. So I was like, that's a good idea. So I kind of looked into it and asked my grandpa Stuckey for some advice, and kind of really started to snowball from there, because that was in early 2014. So like all summer I was doing research and that kind of thing. And for my birthday,
Whoa. I'm doing the math. Okay, so you were about 16, 17 at the time?
I was 15.
Oh, you're 15. And you were tasked with setting up how to diversify the family farm.
So I was kind of doing this alone at this point. We always got paid working at our farm. Mom and Dad always made sure that we got paid for like the hours we worked. We would fill out time cards and everything else, just like all of our other employees at the dairy. We had earned some money from that. I had also had some money from my brothers, and I went in on a sprayer, and we would spray all of our farm's acres, and we sprayed some for a neighbor too. So
that was
we already had some money.
What is with you? You're 15, 16 years old, and you're in on like a sprayer? Is it like a pull behind or a self-propelled? What'd you have?
It was a used self-propelled. It was a used Rogator. We weren't going out and buying a $500,000 sprayer or anything.
But still, at 15 or younger, you were a third owner of a custom spraying business.
Essentially, yeah.
Good night.
A lot of that came from when we raised bull calves as kids. Our parents and uncle and grandma and grandpa were always very generous. They would just give us the calves and pretty much give us the feed, but we were responsible for making sure they were alive and they grew well, and then we would take them to the sale barn then when they were fed out. So we got some money from that. My brothers and I would take a batch, and then my cousins would take a batch, and then we would take a batch. So we would do about 2 batches of calves a year that way. They kind of really let us go out on our own.
But did you like this as a kid? It was a lot of work. Did you ever look at it that way, or was this just what you did for fun?
It was a lot of work, admittedly. Brothers and I would always like tag team doing chores, because we would have like 30 or 50 calves to feed when we did a batch. We had to feed them milk. There was one time, though, my oldest brother was laid up because he just had surgery, and my middle brother had pneumonia. So I had to feed calves by myself for like a week. I was like a 7th grader, I believe, at the time. So that wasn't any fun. But for the most part, it's just kind of what we did. We got paid to like milk and help with chores around the farm that weren't related to our calves.
Mm-hmm.
That helped too. We were treated like employees, essentially. Always enjoyed it. I never loved the cow part of things, and I think that's part of the reason why I was like, well, let's maybe look for something with crops, because crops don't get out and they don't get sick.
Well, honestly, I mean, that's a good thing to realize, because, I mean, some people are into the livestock side, some people are into the agronomy or whatever it is. It's good to realize that and not fight it, to me. I mean, personally, as someone that kind of fought raising hogs when I really didn't enjoy it that much, it's cool that you figured that out early on. Let's skip forward a little bit. I mean, you eventually got into growing these other crops like apples and the gardening.
Yeah, so like I was saying before, for my 16th birthday, I told Mom and Dad, I was like, I just want like half an acre to just try some stuff on.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, my great uncle, so my grandpa on my mom's side, his brother, he had owned some ground that we had been farming for a long time, but it needed sold. And on this ground, there was 3 horse barns that used to be pretty much the prized gem of Bucyrus. They were standardbred or thoroughbred. I can't remember. The one where you're right behind and not on top.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares about horses.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was actually where they pioneered AI for horses there at that farm. That had sat empty for many years, and there was just a couple squatters there. Like I said, my great uncle, he had a partner in that property, but the partner needed to get out of it, so they're trying to sell it quick by the end of October there, and Mom and Dad ended up buying it because it was just a real eyesore, really, because there was just junk cars and just trash all over the place there. So we cleaned out the barns, we decided that we were going to have our farm market in one of those because we needed a good location. And this location was right on State Route 4, just north of town, which has a ton of traffic. It's the main route from Columbus to Lake Erie. We're exactly halfway between the two. There's a lot of traffic there, and it was going to be a great spot to direct market vegetables and stuff. So Mom and Dad decided to buy it, and we just decided to jump in with 2 feet. So that winter, we cleaned up everything. I ordered some apple trees. The next year, we had a roadside wagon, essentially. We sold some produce off of, got my feet wet. So that was in 15. And 16, we moved into one of the barns with our farm market. And that year, so there's 3 barns there. That year, in 2016, the next barn, Mom and Dad opened as an event center. Started that first year with just a couple acres of produce in 2015. This year, in 2020, it's going to be about 50 acres of produce. So we've seen a lot of growth just through our market, a lot of growing pains getting there too.
Well, I got to imagine because you were dairy, you were a row crop, you guys were spraying calves and that, and now you're selling to your end consumer. You're actually dealing with the people that are buying your products. That had to be a heck of a learning curve.
Yes. The vegetable produce sort of end of things, I originally went out alone on it, and the market we did separately. I partnered with my mom and dad, and then we partnered with a family friend. His name's Chris and his wife Andrea. And Chris and Andrea did a lot of cut flowers, and they did farm markets down in Columbus for many years, but they quit doing that. Chris had a lot of experience with that, so we decided to partner with him. He does a lot of our product selection because we sell more than just produce there. He does a lot of product selection and stuff, so that just kind of adds to it. And my wife dated my wife all through high school, through this whole time, so she kind of got to help out with all this, and she actually started growing cut flowers in 2015, and she's got quite a few cut flowers she does today. But I suppose to backtrack then, I originally went out to do the produce alone in 2017. First of the year in 2017, actually, me and my brothers, we all contributed assets we'd collected, and we traded into the family dairy for part ownership. So I had my produce operation that I traded in with some equipment. My one brother, he had a baler, and he ended up buying out my other 2 brothers from the sprayer. He traded, then my oldest brother, he bought a combine, and we all traded that equipment towards the dairy, and we all became partners then, first of 2017.
All right, so yeah, there's a
lot there.
That's a lot happening in a very short amount of time, really. Probably, well, you're 21, so you probably think it was long, but a few years. It's just a drop in the bucket. When you look back over all that you've done in the last few years, how important was it to have a family that works together?
It was very important. It was just very nice to have that support when I was going alone, that I was able to borrow some equipment and just have that support behind it. And even like today, being able to all work together, we get along very well. I'm not sure how my parents ended up doing that, but we all work together very well. There's just a lot of synergies there because Ben and Zach work very closely because Zach now manages the cows and everything, and Ben, he does row crops and feed, so they have to work very closely. Then me and Ben work very closely on rotations and just agronomic stuff, chemicals, you name it. Just having to work together and do it well. It's nice to have brothers and parents that we can all kind of get along and not fight all the time. Because I hear stories about families that break up because siblings have an disagreement about how things should be done, and I just can't fathom it.
I've never heard that in agriculture. Never heard of a family that broke up in agriculture. Never.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, man. There's always got to be some troublesome link in the chain, right? And if everybody's all great, your brothers and your parents, and I'm assuming the link is you.
Probably. Well, there was a time when we did not get along very well. So what happened, how we kind of all got to be partners together is in August of 2016, I believe. My uncle came up to my dad and said, I want out of the dairy. Just out of the blue, said, I want bought out of the dairy. I'll work here for a couple more months, but I want to go do something else. And that kind of was just a blind side because my uncle's done this ever since he got out of college. I mean, he was dairy manager, our herdsman for 20 some odd years. And he just out of the blue said, you know what, I'm done, which dairy is very hard work. And when you don't get paid for it, it just sucks, honestly.
Yeah.
He wanted out. I was a senior in high school at the time. So my brother Ben, he had recently graduated college. He didn't go to college for agriculture or anything. He was just coming home to work on the farm for a couple of years to figure out what he was going to do. He ended up stepping into the herdsman role. My brother Zach, he had been managing calves. He was also helping out there, and I was helping too. My uncle left. He was pretty much completely out of it by November then, and the way my brothers describe it was our employment situation was a dumpster fire. So I want to say at one point we had like 17 employees, which is like way too many for an operation of our size. And we had some people doing drugs. We had just people that just wouldn't show up. So Zach kind of took charge of the hiring and labor. And for a 6-month period there, every week we had one person quit or get fired once a week for 6 months. We averaged.
Good night.
We had just tons of turnover. You know, you can probably guess who got to make up that work is me, Ben, and Zach. Our payroll went down 400 hours every payroll, but me and my brothers were pretty much making that up during that time. And that was a pretty rough time for us because, I mean, it was stressful. Well, you're not getting paid for the milk you're producing. You're working obscene hours. I mean, I was working 40 hours a week and going to high school full time and just trying to manage everything. My brother Zach, he was probably working 90 hours a week during that time and just exhausted, all of them. And there was actually at one time I thought, I don't think our farm's going to make it because we were just all on our wits' end, and Ben and Zach were laying into each other, and it was ugly. And Dad was a master at making us feel better by saying, oh, it'll get better, even though I don't think he really believed it. It was like a rough time. Well, my brother Ben actually ended up pretty much quitting. He's like, I'm not going to work tomorrow. Which, you know, do you blame him? I don't really think so because there was like no end in sight for it. We ended up pulling through that. We ended up getting good help in. We ended up getting in our proper roles, which I think is a big part of why we work so well together. We each have our own role. We get to stick to it. So Zach ended up being our herdsman and dairyman. Then he started doing feed and row crops later that winter after he came back to work. You know, I got to go back to doing produce and not milking all the time and feeding calves. So that was a very rough time for us, but I think that helped us, you know, realize that we can pretty much get through anything after that. Because we were, you know, at our wits' end for months and months, and it was just a miserable time. But after that, I think we all kind of realized that, you know, if we can get through that, we can get through anything. And as long as we can rely on each other, we can do it. That was something else.
Well, and that explains, you know, one of the things you brought up in the pre-interview was that your farm had an exit plan, which most farms don't. I would hate to know the percentage that don't. I would say is very, very, very high. But now I'm wondering, you know, with this, where you guys went through this and where you couldn't get the help and it was just grinding you guys into the ground, would that be the catalyst to why you guys do have an exit plan?
Yeah, so a lot of it was when my uncle left, it was just like, well, where do we go from here? Like, how much does he get paid? Because that was the hard part of it. Market price for a dairy, I mean, that's a lot of money. the market valuation for a 500 cow dairy. And it's like, how do you transition smoothly and fairly? Because, we don't want to pay that off for the next 100 years or, whatever. When Dad went to a lawyer to rewrite the agreement or the partnership agreement, we call it an old man clause because
to their face.
Dad calls it the old man clause.
Oh, okay.
My brothers and I all got a very small percentage of the farm, but in that he said, you're worth what you put into it, but if you make me irritated or you go out on a very bad note, you can be worth what I say you're worth. So that's why we call it the old man clause. We got to keep him happy at least. But Dad's very good about letting us do as much as we can do. He's very much hands off. I've heard stories of Zach like going to meetings and there's like 60-year-olds there and they still haven't made a decision because their 85-year-old dad doesn't let them make any decisions. But which is just blows my mind because
actually, honestly, I'm going to say that I've got no facts to back this up. I'm going to say that's probably more common than not.
Yeah, and Dad, he pretty much lets us do what we need to do. He'll keep us from doing anything too stupid, though, because we still bounce all of our ideas off of him. But pretty much, you say something to him, he goes, "Yeah, sure," because he trusts our judgment and he lets us do quite a bit. Still helps out a lot, especially during this rough time, not getting paid for milk or anything, and having a rough year like this past year. He does a very good job at just being hands off and, letting us make our own decisions and letting us fail on our own while making sure the failures aren't catastrophic at the same time. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
Well, I think a lot of farms could learn a lesson from that. Honestly, I don't have an exit plan. I don't know why I don't, just because probably I don't want to think about it. And I should because I've been in that situation before. So I would give props to you and your family for doing it because that's not a comfortable way to think about things. It's probably needs to be done. All right, let's go back to you. You're selling stuff to those pesky consumers, those people that are going to pay you money for your products. What do you learn in there? How do you go about selling to people that don't know anything about ag?
We get a lot of people going from Columbus to Lake Erie, so we get a lot of yuppies or whatever you want to call them. These people that they have a lot of disposable income and they're not afraid to spend money on fruits and vegetables. We don't have like a lot of, compared to like some markets you can't sell a GMO and you can't sell thing that's not organic. We do all right. I mean, we have some GMO corn, we have some GMO zucchini we sell in the market. We don't get a lot of those questions like some farm markets do that are, right beside a city. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because to get to Lake Erie from Columbus, you drive by a lot of corn and beans. I don't know if they're just maybe more aware or they just don't care as much. I'm not sure. We're like conventional. So, I mean, we sell those things, but, we do get the occasional question like, is this GMO? Is this organic? Some people, you tell them, they're like, oh, okay, and they buy it anyways. Or some people, you say, well, yes, we use pesticides, but we use them, judiciously. We don't just spray to spray for fun. That doesn't make any sense. And, sometimes you explain it to people and they're like, oh, okay, they get it, and they buy it anyways. Maybe they won't buy the tomatoes, but they'll buy a watermelon still. Maybe they don't want to eat the skin per se. But you still get some people, like this year, Chris, one of our market partners, like I mentioned, he had a conversation with a lady. She was asking if anything we sold produce-wise was organic. And he's like, well, no. This year I tried just a small plot of zucchini. I just tried it organically just to see. It was like a tenth of an acre. It was not much at all. And, he explained, well, the zucchini is, if you want something like that, but we can't use the O word because we're not certified or anything. So, he explained that, but instead of being like, oh, okay, I'll buy that, she immediately asked him, well, why isn't everything else then? Just like wouldn't let it go. If you can do one thing, why can't you do it all? he had to explain to her that, well, the climate we're in, it's challenging and it's just something we're trying, and, tried to explain it to her, but it didn't make any sense to her that why, if one thing could be organic, why everything was not organic. And I don't even know that she ended up buying any zucchini. You get people like that too. It's very interesting just seeing the different ideologies that walk through the door there. Some people care greatly, some people don't care at all. They just want produce to eat. So that's been interesting to see develop.
Well, it's very cool. I mean, because a lot of people don't get that experience of talking to the end consumer, and I know a lot of people don't want that, but I think it would do a lot of good just understanding and maybe realizing that not everybody's got a chip on their shoulder about being organic or what. They just want something very good. Do you have like a support system? I know you talked about your family and that. I mean, who's important for you to lean on?
My wife does a very good job at putting up with the hours I put in the summer. So with like produce from April to the end of October, you just work obscene hours. You work from, 6 to, 9 o'clock at night, and, maybe have to spray at night too. And she puts up with that, and she does a very good job. We get to have a lot of fun during the season too, because she grows cut flowers, and that's rather similar to vegetables in some ways. So I get to help her quite a bit with that. We kind of get to lean on each other for support in the summertime, and so that becomes a lot of fun that way. She puts up with all my crazy hours I do, which I'm, every farmer's that way, essentially. But yeah, so I'm very thankful for that.
Personally, I think it helps when you can work with your wife. But where can everybody find you on the old social medias?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. I honestly don't even know what my handle is. I think it's Ethan Stuckey 98. I'm on Instagram too, if you're into pictures and stuff. And then we actually have a website with our market. It's thepickwickplace.com, and you can see the big brick barns and kind of see all we do there. There's a lot that goes on there, but yeah, you can kind of see the market. You get a picture tour of the market and kind of see what's up with that end of things quite a bit. So
Come on, man, you don't know your own handles. Ethan F. Stuckey. So, and that's,
is it really?
Yes, come on.
That's maybe my Instagram handle then.
Well, that's your Twitter handle, I just said. All right, well, you can find it.
The one I said is, I think, maybe my Instagram handle.
You're supposed to know all that stuff. Come on.
Oh, I know. Oh, well.
Well, Ethan, you're an impressive, I must say, young man. You are only 21 years old. You got a lot of stuff figured out that most people don't figure out their entire farming career. But I think a lot of it comes down to the work ethic that obviously was instilled in you early on. And, yeah, I see nothing but success in your future.
Well, thank you very much, Rob, for having me on.
Yes. So Ethan Stuckey from Bucyrus, Ohio. I want to visit there someday.
You should. It's a great little town.
Okay. How many people live there?
12,000. So I suppose not very little.
12,000 evil geniuses living in one place. It's amazing. No wonder it's a bratwurst capital of the U.S. of A.
That's right.
Well, Ethan, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us and everyone else. We hope you catch us next time.
And thank you for listening to the Shark Farmer Podcast. I am your host, Rob Sharkey. Please visit us at www.sharkyfarms.com. And just search for Shark Farmer to follow me on Twitter. Later.